So today on TimesXP in depth with me Naviya Bal, let's discuss why this could be the end of the easy Canada era for Indians. And why are fewer Indians moving to Canada? Why is Canada no longer the dream country, or perhaps no longer the easiest country to call a home? Let's take a closer look. So what happened first? Most importantly, why did so many Indians choose Canada in the first place? So let's travel back in the history. The answer goes back to Canada's immigration philosophy. Unlike the United States, where employment-based immigration often depends on just the employer sponsorship and the country caps, Canada built one of the world's most organized points-based immigration system. Yes, the point-based. The idea was simple. Instead of selecting the immigrants based mainly on the nationality or the employer demand, Canada would choose people based on their skills, education, ability, language, work experience, and age. For educated Indians, this looked like a perfect opportunity. For thousands of software engineers, accountants, healthcare workers, teachers, nurses, and the skilled professionals, they realized that they could qualify through the programs such as Express Entry or the Provincial Nominee Programs. And if they had a university degree, English language proficiency, and relevant work experience, they stood at a realistic chance of receiving a permanent residency then and there. And that alone made Canada different from the world. But the opportunity became even bigger because of the international education. Canadian colleges and universities actively recruited students from India. Tuition fees paid by the international students became a large source of revenue for the institutions. Education consultants across India promoted Canada as the complete pathway rather than simply a study destination. And this promise sounded attractive. Study in Canada, receive a post-graduation work permit, gain a Canadian work experience, and then apply for a permanent residency and become a citizen. Eventually, Canadian citizen. For many students, this appeared to be a clear and structured roadmap, very simple by the way. Compared to the countries where long-term immigration remained uncertain, Canada looked far more predictable and easier. Families were willing to spend significant amounts of education, time on it, money on it, believing that it is an investment in the permanent settlement. Then there were other factors like Canada's labor shortages, an aging population, and a low birth rates that meant countries need more workers and younger generation in multiple sectors. From healthcare to construction, transportation, security, hospitality, tech, all of it needed employers, new talent. And immigration became one of the Canada's primary economic strategies. For Indian professionals, that created enormous opportunities. And trust me, the tech sector expanded rapidly. Healthcare recruited internationally, truck drivers, nurses, engineers, financial professionals, and skilled tradespeople all found opportunities there, in the land of Canada. Even smaller provinces began introducing special immigration streams just to attract the newcomers, mainly the Indians. Now, another reason Canada became popular was the quality of life. Public healthcare, relatively low crime rates, high quality education, political stability, clean cities, multicultural communities, no racism, and strong legal protection for many Indian families. And Canada represented long-term security. More than higher salaries, it was a safe environment. One immigrant settled successfully, they encouraged their relatives, friends, neighbors just to follow. Entire migration network, almost like a globe, developed across the states of Punjab, Gujarat, Haryana, and parts of South also. In India, by the way. Success stories traveled far than the official immigration policies. Every successful immigration was inspired by some of the relatives, by the way. Coaching centers, language institutions, and overseas education companies expanded rapidly in India. It boosted Indian economy as well, and for years, the system continued growing. Well, Canada experienced record population growth within a short period. But housing shortages became severe, rental prices increased sharply, healthcare system came under pressure, and public infrastructure struggled to keep the pace. That's not all. aggressively recruiting international students without ensuring the adequate employment, well, it created a burden. At the same time, temporary residents, including students and foreign workers, reached historically high levels. Political attitudes towards them began changing. Immigration remained important for Canada's economy, but governments increasingly argued that the pace needed to become more sustainable. And that marked the beginning of a policy shift. Student permit rules became stricter, caps were introduced, postgraduate work permits eligibility changed for certain programs, work permit rules became tighter, more scrutinized. Permanent resident admission targets were reduced, much lower. Family sponsorship programs became more limited, and immigration officers, well, they increased the scrutiny of the application. Authorities also intensified the action against the immigration fraud and misuse of the study permits. For Indians, the impact had been particularly noticeable because they represented such a large share of Canada's international student and skilled immigration populations. When the admissions fall, the large source of country's natural experience became the biggest reductions. And that does not necessarily mean that Indians are being singled out, by the way. It reflects that both Canada's overall reduction strategy and India's dominant share is previous immigration numbers. The broader picture extends beyond Canada. Across much of the Western world, immigration policy is becoming more restrictive. Governments in several countries are responding for the public concerns about housing affordability, infrastructure capacity, labor market pressure, and broader management. Well, Canada is not abandoning immigration, it is recalibrating it. Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada (IRCC) is repeatedly stating that immigration remains essential to Canada's long-term economic growth because the demographics and the realities of the workforce shortages. But you know what? The era of rapid expansion appears to be ending. The future applications still changes the strategy. Strong English, French proficiency all matter now. Relevant work experience? Well, very important. Choosing the recognized educational institution is increasingly critical, and understanding the program eligibility before enrolling has become essential. Applicants can no longer assume that studying in Canada automatically leads to permanent residency, and the assumption belongs to an earlier era. The Canadian dream has not disappeared. Canada still welcomes skilled Indians, international students and professionals every single year. But the expectations must now match today's reality rather than yesterday's opportunities. So the biggest lesson is Canada has moved from the immigration system focused on just the growth to focused on balance. And for Indians, that means the pathway still exists, but a little narrower, a little stricter, and more scrutinized. Well, the easy Canada era is ending. The era of strategic, careful, planned immigration has now begun.